There's a particular kind of clarity that arrives late at night. Not the clarity of solving something, the other kind. The kind where you're sitting quietly in your car or your kitchen or the room that's too dark, and something rearranges itself inside you. Something you've been holding a certain way finally settles into its actual shape, and you understand something. Not intellectually, you may have known it for years, but you understand it now, in your body, in a way that costs something. Most emotional maturity arrives this way, not as an achievement, as a recognition. And often, heartbreakingly often, it arrives just slightly too late. This video is about what that recognition looks like, what emotionally mature adults come to understand, and what it feels like to understand it only after the moment has passed. Most of us were taught very early that emotional maturity meant control. Control your reactions. Be the calm one. Don't make it about feelings. Hold it together. Be the one people can rely on, the one who doesn't fall apart, the one who has a measured response to every difficult thing. And somewhere alongside that teaching came another, quieter one. Needing people is a vulnerability. Asking for help is a weakness. The less you depend on others, the more dignity you hold. This felt like wisdom. It may even have helped for a time, but emotionally mature adults eventually come to understand that this entire framework was built on a misunderstanding. The philosopher Aristotle wrote that human beings are by nature political animals, which is to say, creatures of relation. We are not designed to be autonomous. We are designed to need. The capacity to need well, to reach toward others without demanding, to lean without collapsing, is not a flaw to be managed. It is the very thing that makes us capable of love. The mature person doesn't need less. They need more honestly. There's something that can look from the outside exactly like stability. A person who never loses their composure, who offers perspective when you're overwhelmed, who shows up reliably, practically, without drama, who holds themselves together so consistently that you begin to trust the steadiness and stop wondering what might be underneath it. What emotionally mature adults often realize, looking back, is that much of what they offered was presence without proximity. They were there, but they were also, in a precise and important way, not there. The psychologist John Bowlby, who spent his career studying attachment, described how human beings develop internal working models of relationship, unconscious blueprints for what closeness feels like and whether it is safe. Many adults who seem most self-sufficient are operating from a blueprint that says, if I stay slightly behind the glass, I cannot be hurt. I can care. I can help. But I will not fully arrive. The realization when it comes is gentle and devastating in equal measure. The distance was never neutrality. It was a form of departure. There's something most of us have done to the people closest to us. Something we didn't even know was a kind of leaving. I want to name it directly because once you see it, you can't unsee it. Think about the last time someone close to you was genuinely struggling. Not performing struggle, the real kind. Where they didn't have a tidy narrative about it. Where they said something like, I don't know what I'm doing. Or, I'm frightened. Or, hardest of all, I need you. And I hate that I need you. What happened next? If you were trained toward strength, toward being the capable one, you likely moved immediately into a mode of helping. You offered perspective. You asked practical questions. You suggested what to do next. You showed up. And that mattered. But you may have converted an experience that needed to be witnessed into a problem that needed to be solved. The theologian Henri Nouwen wrote about this distinction beautifully. He described the difference between helping and being present, arguing that real companionship requires a willingness to enter someone's experience rather than stand outside it, handing things through the window. Witnessing someone's pain without trying to repair it requires something most of us were never taught to tolerate: the feeling of helplessness, the admission that you cannot save them, that love does not come with a guarantee. Emotionally mature adults often realize, too late, that the people who most needed their presence received instead their competence. There is a subtler realization that comes alongside the others. Emotionally mature adults eventually notice that much of what they called acceptance was actually acceptance with an invisible condition. They accepted the people they loved, truly, sincerely. But the acceptance tended to extend most fully when those people were struggling in a particular direction, when they were growing toward something, when they were moving through difficulty in the way the mature person privately believed they should. Carl Rogers, one of the most influential psychologists of the 20th century, spent decades studying what he called unconditional positive regard, the experience of being accepted not for your progress or your potential, but simply for your existence. His conclusion was that most people have almost never felt this. What they have felt is conditional regard dressed in the language of love. I accept you as long as you're working on yourself. I'm here for you as long as the struggle fits a shape I recognize. I love you, and the love deepens when you need me, and thins slightly when you no longer do. The recognition of this, when it arrives, is not comfortable, but it is clarifying, because once you see it, you can begin, slowly, imperfectly, to offer something more honest. The deepest thing that emotionally mature adults come to understand is also the most counterintuitive. They had believed for years that intimacy was the reward for getting themselves together. First, become stable. First, resolve the old wounds. First, reach a sufficient level of wholeness. Then you will be ready to be truly close to people. But the realization, when it comes, is the reverse. Emotional maturity doesn't develop in preparation for relationships. It develops inside them. The philosopher Martin Buber wrote about what he called I-Thou encounters, moments of genuine meeting between two people, where neither is treating the other as an object, a project, or a problem to be managed. In those encounters, Buber argued, something becomes possible that is not possible anywhere else, something that cannot be achieved alone, in private, on one's own terms. You become more whole, not by completing yourself and then offering the completed version to others. You become more whole by being incomplete in front of someone who stays anyway. The window for certain relationships does close. Time is not infinitely patient. Some conversations will not happen now that could have happened then. And also, there are still people in the room. The realization doesn't have to be grand to matter. It can be a text you send to someone you've been slightly too composed with. A moment where you say, plainly, that you found something difficult, not to process it, but simply because it was true, and they are someone who deserves the truth. A willingness to need something from someone without dressing the need in usefulness first. This is what emotional maturity actually looks like in practice. Not a permanent state of equanimity, not the absence of old patterns, but the growing ability to notice, in the moment, when you have retreated, and then quietly to come back. James Baldwin once wrote, "Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced." The facing is the beginning, and it is available right now. I'd love to know, When did you first start to understand something like this? Was there a moment where the realization arrived, and what did it cost? Leave it in the comments. I read everything. If this series is resonating with you, subscribing means the next video finds you too. There's more coming.